Hi everyone, it's Katie from Chords Records. I wasn't planning to do another listening shelf so soon after my last one, but two things happened to me this week, which I just wanted to capture for you guys. If you're new to my channel, hi, I'm Katie from Chords Records. I talk about vinyl. I occasionally talk about other stuff from vinyl, like my listening system, etc. Please subscribe, and if you want to know when I put out a video, which is every weekend, hit the notification bell. Right, two things happened to me this week. The first was I received a very limited edition, the last single ever of a legendary Australian punk band called Private Function. You probably don't know them. I'm assuming most of you are from the UK and the US who listen to my channel and subscribe to my channel. But Private Function have been around since 2016. They're very irreverent, and in true punk fashion, they kind of don't care what you think. But what's really clever about them is they are fantastic musicians. The live shows are amazing. In December, they announced that they were no longer going to be a band and they were signing off. So 10 years in the business and they're done. And then a couple of weeks ago, they announced that they would be releasing one more 7-inch single called Music Sucks, (FU), full word. I won't say it for obvious reasons. And I happened to be on Instagram when they announced this about 3 minutes prior, and I could not have clicked by quicker. And it arrived this week, and I listened to it for the first time this morning. I refused to stream it. I wanted to listen to it for the first time on my 45 single. First, I want to show you exactly what they've done. So it comes in a little box, a typical 7-inch box. There's their, Private Function address. The actual box comes with a little Private Function sticker, and then the sleeved 7-inch. And Still on Top Records, cute little sleeve. And those observant amongst you will have noticed the label. Does that seem familiar? It should do if you are into Australian classic rock. That's, of course, Albert Productions, the phenomenal label that released the AC/DC albums, mid-70s. You should be familiar with it. And hard to know whether they've done this with permission or not, because they are really into marketing. They're really into gimmick. They did say on their Instagram that they were having a beer in a pub with the ex-founders of Albert Productions, and 15 years after that label folded, they said, yes, you can do it one more time. But what is quite funny is the actual song, which I will put up and you can see it's actually got circa 1976, so classic AC/DC time, and Vanda Young as the writers, which is not true, of course. They were iconic writers in the Australian rock scene from the late 60s and the 70s. So all a bit funny. And when you go to their iTunes and you actually look at the real production writers, it's obviously not our Vanda Young, clearly. So it's all just a bit of fun, and I just really like it. So I wasn't quite sure what to expect with this final song, and the B-side is Taken the Edge Off, and it is phenomenal. I think it kind of leans a little bit more to the heavy metal than the punk, but honestly, hats off to the mixers and the masters of this album, the producers, all the behind the scenes guys that made it. It sounds so brilliant. On my Sansui amp, you probably can see it there, and my vintage turntable, It sounds phenomenal, and it is thrashy and punk crossed with heavy metal and everything you want in great Australian punk. And the song Music Sucks brackets FU classic. So that is something that I wanted to speak to you about. I think they sold out limited edition to 300, but I'm so happy to have that. An RIP Private Function. Okay, completely changing gears now. The other reason I wanted to do this listening shelf so soon after the last one was I went into a local kind of antique mall in my town. I live in a town called Katoomba, and there's a fantastic old postmaster building that's been turned into kind of a group of shops that all have different owners, and one of them is Orange Records. And it's just a bunch of crates of records. And there are a lot of imports and a lot of European, probably MP3 lathe vinyl there. But they had some real treats. They had a lot of $5 records, and then they had a few other bits and pieces. I think they've potentially bought a collection. And one album I got from that was this. This is Lucinda Williams' Southern Soul, From Memphis to Muscle Shores and More. And if you don't know what this is, Lou's Jukebox in Studio Concert Series Volume 2. Lucinda Williams did a series of live recordings in a studio during COVID. I think there were 6 in all. They've recently been released on CD. There might be 7, actually, I think. I don't think that has them all. I'll put a picture up here if there are more. And this was the second one in the series. So it was before she had her stroke. So it was 2020. So it was just before she sort of had her stroke. And these are fantastic if you can find them and pick them up. They're really great interpretations of other people's music. So she picks a theme. It could be the Beatles. What else has she done? Christmas, country classics. Tom Petty was the first one. This is Memphis to Muscle Shoals and More. So that kind of real Southern soul. And the tracks on here include Ode to Billy Joe, I Can't Stand the Rain, Misty Blue, Rainy Night in Georgia, amongst a whole bunch of ones that I'm not familiar with. And it is so great. Her voice is so perfect for this kind of music. Of course, I think she's from Louisiana, New Orleans, and she has kind of got that Southern kind of vibe to her. Although she obviously has made a career in Nashville, this music kind of really lends itself to her music, her voice. I will say a couple of the songs may be a little bit on the slightly poppier side to kind of a soul vibe than I like. But a really great series, and one that I'm decided I'm going to get them all. There's only 6 or 7. So I just love Lucinda Williams, and Car Wheels on a Gravel Road is one of my favourite albums ever. So I'm very happy to have picked this up in this antique mall. And it was in the shrink, completely mint. So happy with that. All right. And then sticking with, shall we call it country music? This is one of those albums that sometimes I should have put it into the thread that Noble Records proposed a couple of weeks ago about albums you'd be surprised you have that I have. I love a bit of John Denver. And I saw this was $2 or $5. And, it's 1971, so it's early John Denver. And I'm sort of familiar with it, but not really. I kind of knew of the song. What was the Eagle song? There was an Eagle song on here, The Eagle and the Hawk. And I thought, kind of a song was written by Chris Christopherson. I'll give it a go. Like, I really didn't know what I was going to get. Dynaflex vinyl, which can be hit or miss. And the album itself, while very flat, and on the orange RCA label. It's very flat, but it was quite dirty. But it was pretty kind of in really good condition and no warp. And I thought I'll give it a go, like $5. And I put this on, and I could not believe how great it sounded. I don't know anything about this album, and I looked for the master, and that I couldn't find that. It sounds phenomenal. I'd love to. This is an Australian press, and I'd love to hear a US press, because sometimes Australian press can sound a little bit slightly tinny, and it was manufactured in Australia. But if it's manufactured in Australia and sounds phenomenal, what will the US one sound like? So I'd be curious to know if you could let me know in the comments. It's a kind of a love-hate relationship with John Denver, right? But this album, honestly, like, have a listen if you haven't revisited him in a long time. It is really great. So there's that one. The next one I saw, again, I think it was for about $10 in the secondhand shop, and I picked this up straight away because I've just come off the back of watching the Rick Beato interview with him, and that is Bruce Hornsby. And if you haven't watched that interview with Rick Beato, this guy is a genius. A lot of his piano playing chops come from Bach, maybe, like from classical music. He did a lot of classical music in the interview, just sitting at the piano. In Rick Beato long form interviews, they often just sit at their instrument and then occasionally will, throw a chord out or, pick up a little riff to illustrate a point they're making. And this interview did not disappoint. And just hearing the stories of him playing with some great jazz musicians in the 80s, latter day jazz musicians who had seen better days, it was just phenomenal. And this guy, and it just kind of reignited my kind of yearning to hear him again, because I loved kind of the bluesy and the almost the gospely, warm and fuzzy feel that this music gives you. And yeah, it's a bit 80s when you put it on. And of course, This Is the Way It Is, which was his big hit. And this is an Australian press, and this is an Australian press that doesn't sound great. And I'm sure the US presses do. This was on a label. This was on Starcall. But hearing it again and being kind of reminded of kind of what a fun artist he was and what great musicians were in the band, I think I will try and find some better pressings of Bruce Hornsby throughout his catalogue as they come up. I certainly won't go searching for them online, but if I see them in the wild, I'm going to look for them. Tell me what you think. The next album is another, we're sort of sticking with the country Americana theme today, except for our opening punk. And this is a really fun album. Everywhere Isn't Texas, by an artist called August Pontheia, or Pontheia. A country artist. I think they live in Nashville now. And this is their first full-length LP, although I think there have been some EPs. Kind of that very much that kind of sort of camp cowboy vibe that's going around, which I just absolutely love. Look at that cover. And Everywhere Isn't Texas, and obviously there are themes around kind of not belonging. They grew up in Texas, and it's a really strong album. And one of the great things about this artist is their vocal chops. Their voice is really phenomenal. The thing that might let it down just slightly for me is I'm not sure the songwriting is sort of the songwriting that I'm, comparing it to another album which also came out in the last week or two, Middle of Nowhere, with Casey Musgraves. Not dissimilar artists, I guess. But the songwriting maybe needs to mature a little. but the voice is phenomenal, and I'm really happy to have this album and support the artist. So that's August Pontheia, Everywhere Isn't Texas. Sticking with Americana, folk, indie rock, I shouldn't finish this listening shelf without mentioning the #1 album out in Australia, #1 album out in the UK, the #1 album out in the US, and that is Noah Kahan's The Great Divide, which came out last week. I love Noah Kahan and have a few of his albums. I particularly loved his live album at Fenway Park. And I was really looking forward to this album. And again, I waited to get the vinyl before I streamed it. And God, it's a long album. It's 17 songs, plus a couple of days after his release, he releases 4 other songs. So there's 21 songs, and it's long. And I love him, but I'm wondering if it needed a bit of an edit. Not sure. I think, there are enough people in the world who absolutely love Noah Kahan for this to be absolutely fine. And I do wonder why he left it at 17 songs. It's a double album. And there are some really hooky tunes in there, which we've come to love with Noah Kahan. He's kind of stuck to his lane from Stick Season, his previous album. And really hasn't gone sort of too far out, although he did bring in Aaron Dessner, which, from The National, which, is sort of the producer du jour at the moment, and for this kind of music. And you can tell the songs that he's definitely got his fingerprints all over, these beautiful sort of guitars and synths and eerie kind of vocals, I guess. But that's Noah Kahan, The Great Divide. I'm definitely not going to purge it, love it, going to keep it in my collection. I've got his other albums. So that's it. That's my listening shelf for this week. But the headline is Private Function, Music Sucks, brackets FU. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.